That brings us to the very strange case of Kim Jong-un, who is presently the North Korean dictator that is threatening the U.S. with nuclear missiles. And all the press is whipping up the fervor that we are going to be going to war with North Korea. But who is Kim Jong-un? Well, he's a very interesting character. And here's a video from Fox News that appears to ask the same sorts of questions that I'm asking. So it goes through, and just in recent history since 2013, there's been a lot of shenanigans going on in North Korea. He was publicly unveiled in 2010 as the new leader. He was given the rank of a 4-star general at that time in the People's Army. He has that gravity-defying hairstyle. He looks like a mix in between his father, Kim Jong-il, as he aged, and then his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, but not really. His uncle was executed shortly after a special military trial in 2013. I wonder why. And Kim Jong-nam, his half-brother, was also assassinated by North Korean agents in Kuala Lumpur. His birthday is on January 8th, a national holiday, but we don't know how old he is exactly. It's widely to believe he's in his mid-30s. They listed his birthday as 1984, and 5, he hand-selected North Korea's first all-female music group. Well, let's look at a Telegraph article about the happy days at school by this North Korean future dictator. Kim Jong-un, who may be anointed as North Korea's new leader, was educated under a false name at a Swiss school. Interesting. Switzerland. That doesn't raise any kind of notion that he'd be a Stalinist dictator being schooled in an elite Swiss boarding school, but let's go on. To his fellow pupils, he was a pleasant, unremarkable classmate, a quiet teenager dedicated to a typical adolescent passions of computer games, designer, gym clothes, and action movies. But he was listed under an alias. His name was Pak Un, who enrolled at the state school in Switzerland back in 1997. Seemed just like another shy new boy. The son, a classmate has told us by an Asian ambassador's son who went to school with the future fearless Stalinist dictator, whom the press is presently saying we're going to go to a nuclear engagement with. Well, looks like being indoctrinated at a Swiss boarding school where all those IMF bankers are seems like a pretty good start for a dictator. There is a template that these globalists use for taking over a country and occupying it. And it started with Caesar Augustus. And they use the template, they call it the Four Horsemen template. First horseman's the white horseman, he's the conqueror, and he's going to win this war against the world. The second horseman is the red horseman. That stands for blood and genocide. So you conquer the territory by invading it and killing, the active genocide of the indigenous people. After the act of killing has subsided, then the third horseman comes in, who is the horseman, the black horseman. And that represents the famine that always follows an invasion, genocide. Then the rest of the indigenous people are killed through famine and pestilence. And then you have the pale horseman that rides through the country. He is the pale horseman of death, exterminating the indigenous people. So the globalists, the Wall Streeters, and the old Roman Guard can then set up their own capitalist economic system and strip the country of its mineral resources, use the remaining indigenous as slaves, and starting up their old drug lines once again. So here's a Wikipedia entry about the history of North Korea. And what I find very interesting is, just like the French Revolution, just like the Bolshevik Revolution, just like the Chinese Revolution, there's always a government in exile trying to liberate the country of their origin, supposed origin. So in Mao Zedong's China, the North Korean Democratic People's Republic of Korea was a government in exile, and it was residing in communist China until the end of World War II, when the U.S. went to war. Backing South Korea, went to war with North Korea, and then they installed their dictators. So let's take a look at here's an article I found in Veterans Day. It was written in April 3rd of 2013 by Benjamin Fulford. I know that he's considered somewhat of a quack, but he is in Japan, and he does, I'm sure some of the information he does give us is based on some fact. But he outlines a very interesting article here in 2013 when he reports that, in talking to a Chinese official diplomat, that the Chinese diplomat related to him that North Korea is considered to be a wholly owned subsidiary of Wall Street and the U.S., that it's headquartered, the North Korean government is headquartered in Japan, and Japan, you know, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Wall Street and the U.S. bankers, and that Benjamin Fulford relates this very strange story about where North Korea got their nuclear material. And I don't know if this is true or not, but it certainly goes to the point that in 2013 they were trying to explain how North Korea, after famine and assault and genocide, would have nuclear material. Well, this is the story, and I'm now seeing that I'm not quite believing it, but the story goes that a Russian submarine sank around North Korea. The Japanese helped and assisted North Korea to retrieve at the bottom of the ocean floor nuclear material. The nuclear material was divided up into 6 packets and divided and used in developing the Russian Scud-type missiles. I guess the Russians gave them the technology. And then after the people involved in retrieving this nuclear material started dying or being assassinated, one of them ran to a mission in North Korea as a whistleblower, told them the story of this horrible incident where the Koreans were able to get this nuclear material, and this whistleblower is the one that gave the U.S. the story. If you believe that, I don't know. Sounds like probably the North Koreans got their nuclear material the old-fashioned way, probably through the Clinton Foundation, more than likely. So that's an interesting story and very strange. Well, the rumor is that North Korea was trying to distance itself from the U.S. occupation and from the colonial rule of the Wall Street bankers, and was cozying up with China. And this is the reason why the North Korean leader, the father of the present leader, was assassinated, and why the young son defected to Malaysia, because he knew he was going to be next in line to be assassinated. And the present leader is simply a cartoon character, it seems to me, doing the bidding of Wall Street. As we've learned from other researchers, that around these rat lines of stealing the resources of a country, such as the oil through pipelines through Afghanistan. Other rat lines arise. So here we have Kim Jong-un, Breaking Bad, the secret world of North Korean meth. So they were the largest exporters of this meth that is devastating our young people. The other rat line that springs up around the other globalist rat lines of drugs and stealing the resources, which is human trafficking or slaving. It states here in the Telegraph that 100,000 North Koreans sent abroad as slaves, which again is simply the globalists doing it through their puppet dictator. So I'm just going to leave you with this final note that the Korean dictator presently, he has a very Mongolian Chinese look, very Mao Zedong. And as you know, the North Korean government in exile was in communist China and under the protection of Mao Zedong. So we have come to know the Koreans looking very much like this, very white looking, very Chinese looking, on the Mongolian side, not like the Southern Asian peoples. So I thought it would be interesting to look back on what Koreans looked like before the People's Republic of Korea entered. And here is Koreans at the turn of the century. You see how dark they are? This is a bride who's a lighter-skinned Asian, but she's marrying a very dark looking Korean. And look at this Korean here. She's a beautiful lady, but she almost looks like Native American with those high cheekbones. And then look at the father. Very dark, very, very dark. We don't see that today in Korea. I wonder what happened to these darker Koreans. What North Koreans look like at the turn of the century. Okay, there they are. This is how they looked. They were very dark, not that light-skinned Mongolian look. There are a few light ones, but these are probably the royalty that had interbred with the Jesuits. But as we go down, look how dark. Look at them. Does that look like a Korean to you? Not anymore. These dark-skinned Koreans have been completely wiped out. For the look of the present-day Koreans, which don't look like Koreans at all. Not the Koreans that lived in the North Korea and South Korea during the turn of the century. So why do the globalists want North Korea? It's very simple. North Korea is sitting on 6 trillion in mineral sources. And it also looks like that North Korea has been ethnically cleansed of its darker skinned Koreans, and transplanted in their place is this very strange puppet looking Mongolian Chinese person with a Korean name only. Looks like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse did their project on North Korea.